Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Another comic by J. Michael Straczynski, same artist as last week, but of course with a new matchup. The Scarlet Speedster gets the opportunity to punch Nazis in the face, which is really all the selling point we actually need, right folks? I'm taking issue with Brave and the Bold, Volume 3, number 28, seeing the Flash paired up with the Blackhawks, the most famous fictional World War II pilots that I am currently aware of. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover features Flash running toward the reader, the Blackhawk emblem behind him, as the squadron themselves soar above, like how an air show would operate in the DCU. Looks really cool, showing a nice balance for the featured characters. We begin in Belgium, specifically a large empty field, save for the Flash, a Dr. Garton, and a machine called the Multi-Spectrum Laser. According to the nerd, it'll emit a beam of light, and enable them to alter its vibrational properties, and thus change its speed and understand its properties. Or in layman's terms, science magic. They've set up in Ardennes because they need a long stretch of land to monitor the light as its properties change. Apparently the equipment's so delicate, transporting is tricky, so maybe that's why taking it apart and rebuilding elsewhere wasn't really an option. The guy in the ruby PJs is handed a device to monitor the changes as they happen as he runs alongside the beam as close as he can get to light speed. And please refrain from telling the beam, "I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you." At the word go, the experiment begins. The laser fires and the Flash is off. As he experiences time dilation, minutes to him being an instant in normal time, the beam's changing frequency shorts out the scanner, as well as interacting with the Speedster's own vibrational frequency, pulling him in until there's an explosion and he blacks out. When he awakens, he starts feeling cold, not from shock, but the fact that it's suddenly winter. He can keep warm by speeding up his molecules. The Flash, fastest human microwave alive! But his leg is broken in 2 places, so he can't work up the speed necessary to run back through the lingering rift he just fell out of. Which is a little weird to me because I thought speedsters had an accelerated metabolism that essentially acted as a healing factor. I remember hearing about Impulse needing a limb repeatedly broken so the doctors operating on him could make sure it was set right. So it's either an oversight by the writer, or the healing thing doesn't work the same for all Speed Force users. He needs to find the injury and figure out whether he went forward or backward in time, then limps up a hill to get his answer. He sees Ratsey's soldiers goose-stepping across the field, meaning he's dropped somewhere in the Battle of the Bulge during World War II.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
One spots our hero and orders the goons to fire, in English for some reason. Unable to run on a broken leg or stay behind the tree until they run out of ammo, Flash whips up a smoke screen of snow. A snow screen, if you will. Then makes a hasty retreat, but slips down the hill. He tries to recover before the enemy can get a beat on him again, only to meet with an armed Commander Blackhawk. "Sprechen Sie English? And are you willing to buy some candy for my kid's scout troop?" He identifies as the Flash, a civilian, which is why he's wearing such a bullseye-adjacent suit. The only Flash Blackhawk is aware of is the guy in the helmet and blue pants, and raises his weapon again, until a couple of his men approach. They confirm the Germans shooting at the stranger until he created a snowstorm to get away. It's when they call their CO by his name that Zippy suddenly realizes he's talking to the legendary Blackhawks, whom he read about as a kid. Then how was the enormous bird emblem on their uniforms not indication enough until now? Isn't that the entire point of the symbols, to be recognizable? Or is he in too much pain to focus? In a nearby damaged but empty house, as he puts his leg in splints, we get confirmation of which Flash this is, seeing him unmasked with his blonde hair.
You are very, 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 very.
He's explained the lightspeed shenanigans that sent him back in time, which stuns the airman. "Mister, coming from the great state of Texas, the land of tall tales, I have heard some doozies in my time, but you just took the cake. Also the pudding, the pie, and half a duck while you were at it." Speedsters need a lot of calories to function, even in colorful regional metaphors. Blackhawk remains skeptical, given the lack of proof, but offers the stranger the chance to convince him. A few weeks ago, the Hawks helped get some defecting German scientists to New Mexico for a top-secret project, the name of which only the commander has. If he is from the future, he can name something that would be textbook knowledge after the war. Barry saves himself by accurately citing it as the Manhattan Project, though any further details are kept from the rest of the men. Alan asks why the renowned flyers are, not in the air. Blackhawk says that after months of flying without a break, they were assigned some downtime for a big forthcoming operation in Berlin. They were being driven through Ardennes, so firmly in Allied control, it was considered the safest place in Europe. I'm going to sleep for a week, my friends. We've only got 5 days R&R, Andre. Oui, but that is all right. I do my best flying when I am asleep. Still safer than flying in a Boeing right now. They were ambushed by Uncle Adolph's goons, their driver killed, and the transport tipped over. They managed to take the enemies out, despite the 4-to-1 odds by my count, but they had no communications, were a long way from base camp, and not sure where to go to be most useful. This reminds Barry that there was a town the Allies held to keep the fascist loser brigade from getting the drop on their troops, and letting it fall would change history. Before that town is named, Blackhawk spots the enemy closing in on them, ordering his men to take position. One of them, the Texan, I think Chuck Wilson is his name, hands the superhero a pistol to help out, having a good feeling about him despite his commander's distrust. As the shooting starts, Barry is uncertain since he's not accustomed to using firearms. If the fact that they're ratsies isn't enough, pretend they're all that obnoxious laughing dog from Duck Hunt and you'll do fine. No, he has another idea. Chucking house debris with super speed, dropping loose bricks on the enemy, which halts their advance without killing them. Blackhawk does not take kindly to this, grabbing Barry and putting him against the wall. They're in a war, kill or be killed, so he'd better start acting like it quick-like, otherwise he's a cowardly impediment to the struggle, and Hawk won't hesitate to shoot him for it. The other men agree, saying they signed up to take out as many Axis soldiers as they can. Even though Flash made a vow not to kill, he'd better figure things out quick, because Blackhawk was serious about putting a cap in his red tuchus. They ask about the town that was mentioned earlier, so important to the war, and Barry replies, Bastogne. I mean, they're not wrong, but prisoners of war is still a thing, right? But let's say that there are extenuating circumstances, and they can't or were ordered not to bother with that. Flash, rain down bricks on Nazis! Effective and hilarious. No explanation about what happened to the bricked enemy soldiers. Maybe they were left in the snow, or maybe the Hawks took advantage of some easy targets. They leave the house, as Barry narrates, that the airmen have a point. People get killed in war, and as antithetical as killing is to his beliefs, the same is likely true of the Blackhawks. He's in a situation that's making him question when it is or isn't right to take a life. No sane man wants to kill. What I said to Hal after he stole my lunch from the communal fridge at the Hall of Justice notwithstanding. Stopping for a brief rest near a turned-over truck with more dead comrades, the Speedster decides to resolve his dilemma. The Flash doesn't kill or carry a gun, but Barry Allen can, in service of his country, as he dons a spare uniform from the truck. The following days, as depicted on a splash page collage, seem to blur among the death and shooting as they reach Bastogne, and Barry mentions that the Germans ordered a General McAuliffe to surrender the city. He sends back a one-word reply. Nuts.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Even when the battle worsens, the Blackhawks pass on the opportunity to return to the air and leave, pushing the enemy into retreat and following them over the Meuse River. Days become weeks, and eventually some generals start asking questions Barry can't answer, since he's been mostly avoiding unnecessary attention. So he heads back to the rift, his leg healed enough that he can try passing through. Blackhawk approaches, wanting to ask him something. Why, after all these weeks, do you have whiskers while I'm clean-shaven? No, it's something he wanted to inquire about the day they met, if they win the war to end all wars. Alan says yes, they win, but there is still conflict, with men and women dying every day. But the country is still the country. It has its flaws and it isn't always right, but it's still intact. And here I am in 2025, not sure how to respond to that. Barry puts his suit back on. Blackhawk tells him to go with God, and he gets a running start before entering the rift. That I guess we should assume just closes after this. He returns to his own time, the many weeks he spent having been only a second-long disappearance to Dr. Garton. The scientist eagerly goes to grab his journal to chronicle this extraordinary development, though one would think he would have already had it on hand for the experiment to begin with, but Flash doesn't think what he does is as extraordinary as those who gave their lives in the bigger fight, as the comic ends on the sight of multiple grave markers. Okay, a little weird this lightspeed altering test was done so close to hallowed ground, but maybe they kept a respectable distance. That was Brave and the Bold, number 28, Firing Line. There's a lot to like about this story, but some stuff raised my eyebrow. For the most part, it's a very respectful acknowledgement of one of the worst conflicts in modern history, a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made to fight the evil of fascism, and it's always fun to see those goose-steppers get clobbered so creatively, because, if you'll recall,
Nazis suck, they really, really suck. Nazis suck, they really, really suck. They suck, they suck.
For so long it was just common sense that they were the bad guys with the flawed, dangerous ideology, and while I don't want to make a big debate out of it, it feels like nowadays some people are either forgetting about it or making people forget for power or money. So-called journalists nodding along with lies that Poland's starting the war by not wanting to be invaded. Loudmouth liars / fake patriots / actual traitors who scam money from their audience, throwing out the Ratsy salute, pretending it's not the Ratsy salute, while facing no consequences. So yeah, I'd say there's something wrong here. And I think the only reason those idiots' faces aren't punched in more is because we're further removed from the conflict and most of the soldiers who fought it have passed away. Throwing that salute, even while play acting like it was just to irritate whoever you're told to hate this week, is an insult to every Allied warrior who died fighting in World War II. It's not a joke, it's not acceptable, it's not a meme, and it's not American. It represents the worst of humanity, and trying to pass it off as a fun trend is reopening wounds that are still healing for people across the world, including the country it originated from. Pretending otherwise only gives the Ratsies cover to start their idiocy all over again and cause more needless suffering. And now as a palate cleanser, the incomparable John Lovitz.
Yeah, they're always pissed, honey. They're Nazis. It's like it's their job.
But yeah, back to the, review about a comic book with a guy who runs really fast. It does raise some valid concerns regarding someone who isn't willing to go as far as the enemy in such an extreme situation. Straczynski gives us an effective reason for bringing internal struggle to Barry by hindering his ability to run. Otherwise, he could have just dashed back to his own time without any fuss, though maybe he was meant to interfere and help protect Baston.
It's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Or if he stayed, dealt with the soldiers more efficiently, tied them up, and left them at the nearest army base as prisoners. But with a busted leg, he needs to be more inventive. And that's one of the things I appreciate about heroes who refuse to kill. It makes them think outside the box to defeat their opponents, while also giving said enemy the chance to reform. Blackhawk is understandably angry, since he spent so much time fighting along people who know how to follow orders and aren't opposed to offing their enemy. Given the times they're in, you can see why he would view non-lethal means as counterproductive. To him, it just gives the enemy time and opportunity to regroup and try again. Coming to terms with this, Flash goes the extra mile in differentiating his identities, that while one of them doesn't use lethal force, the other has little recourse. That said, we don't get a lot of what he does or how it affects him. We get one page of wartime that suggests what happens, but nothing too directly tied to Barry. It does not make it easy to understand why what he may be feeling would be so dissimilar if he had just kept his vow. And for all his knowledge of the war, it's like he never heard of Desmond Doss, a real-life soldier who served and survived without carrying a weapon or taking a life out of religious objection. Would Blackhawk have given him a pass because he was technically a medic? There's also the fact that, as Alan points out, he's a civilian, an injured one. Forcing him to make a choice on the idea that he might otherwise be a liability, despite how effective his techniques clearly proved to be, borders on irrational. I just think maybe these guys could have been a bit more understanding. But hey, I've never been in combat, so I can only critique so much. Though, if you think about it, if nothing else, sparing them means they'll face international justice and save the Blackhawks ammunition for after Flash quantum jogs back home. The art does a great job of instilling scenes with the anger, the tension, and chaos characters experience, as well as the heavy, somber moments like Barry putting on that uniform. It's a good story that wants to show respect for those who served, and does a fine job of it. Its more personal elements of Barry understanding certain tragic necessities of war, and even participating in them, could have used some more elaboration to avoid feeling so rushed. Yes, I know, fastest man alive, but how often does he get away with using that excuse? I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.